New Mexico expects to spend just under $600 million in the first full year of the program. The state has spent years building early childhood funding. In 2020, it created a $10 billion trust fund using revenue from its booming oil and gas industry. Then in 2022, voters approved drawing more from the land grant permanent funds. The governor estimates this program will save families up to $12,000 a year. But Republicans here say a universal system isn't the right move. State Party Chair Amy Barella says it's unsustainable as it leads to greater government dependency and thinks overwhelming demands will limit family choice.
Build the services for those that need the services. It is not a universal requirement.
Early Childhood Secretary Elizabeth Gerginski says the planned expansion adds 2,000 childcare slots.
We still have the requirement that families have a reason to need childcare.
The state has not yet said what reasons it will consider. Finding enough childcare workers is a big challenge. Officials estimate they'll need 5,000 more to handle the demand. The state mandates they will be paid at least $18 an hour. Barbara Tetro owns several early childhood centers in Farmington.
I have 125 employees, and to say I am going to increase $6 an hour for 125 employees and pay those payroll taxes, that is a huge burden.
Providers can bill the state for higher wages, but only after employees have already been paid. Families can start filing applications now. The state's goal is for free childcare for all to start on November 1st. For NPR News, I'm Taylor Velasquez in Albuquerque.
This is NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from WNYC members and from The Economist. In a world of rapid change, The Economist seeks to cut through the noise, to offer insight into what matters now and what's coming next. Daily global reporting, podcasts, videos, and more at economist.com. And your part-time controller, specializing in nonprofit accounting and committed to supporting nonprofits with financial management services such as budgeting and forecasting. yptc.com/NPR.
It is 5:44 and you're listening to Morning Edition on WNYC. Today on the Brian Lara Show, I hear legal analysis of the indictment of New York State Attorney General Tish James. That conversation and more right here at 10 on WNYC. Right now, John Schaefer has the Holiday Hit Alert.
The Spanish singer, songwriter, and producer Pablo recently released his debut LP, but he'd already built up an impressive array of writing and producing credits, winning Latin Grammys back in 2022 under his given name, Pablo Drexler. Pablo is the son of the hugely successful Uruguayan-born musician Jorge Drexler, and his own music, as Pablo draws on rock, folk, and traditional Mexican music. In fact, he brought the Mexican singer Macario Martinez to our studio to record a version of their song, Ojos Ajonjoli, Sesame Eyes. That's Pablo with Macario Martinez live in our studio, and a song called Ojos Ajonjoli. The full session is today's edition of Soundcheck, our twice-weekly podcast, available wherever you get podcasts or at newsounds.org.
We have rain across the area, 58 right down Massapequa, 55 in the Merrimack, and 53 in Morristown. We have a coastal flood warning for the area until 6 o'clock with strong and very high winds, so let's be careful. Rain and a high near 59 today in the city, breezy and very windy as well at times. Rain likely by midnight, a low of 58, still some strong winds. It's 7:46.
On a Monday, it's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
Enemy Martinez. Many of the headlines marking the death of actress Diane Keaton this weekend mention Annie Hall. That's the film that earned her an Oscar and made her a distinctively haphazard fashion icon.
Oh, God, Annie. Well. Oh, well. La-di-da, la-di-da, la-la, yeah.
NPR's Bob Mondello says the part of Annie Hall fit her like the black felt hat the character wore so well, but there was always more to Keaton, and audiences sense that.
Diane Keaton was featured in the Broadway musical Hair before she ever appeared on screen. And while the film career that followed spanned 6 decades, if she had quit Hollywood after just the first, she'd still have been a leading lady for the ages. In just the 1970s, she appeared in 2 Godfather movies, 6 films with Woody Allen, including Sleeper, Love and Death, Play It Again, Sam, in a part she had originated on Broadway, and Manhattan. And the year she won a Best Actress Oscar for the comedy Annie Hall, she also left audiences trembling for her repressed schoolteacher caught in a dark spiral of one-night stands in the searing sexual drama Looking for Mr. Goodbar.
I'm alone, not lonely, and depressed, and you're depressing me.
This bouncing back and forth among genres continued throughout her career, winning her Oscar nominations and audience affection in about equal measure. She was nominated for Warren Beatty's Reds, where she played an intense writer hanging out with socialists.
I don't want to be patronized. I'm sorry if you don't believe in mutual independence and free love and respect.
And nominated again for Marvin's Room as a caregiving daughter who ended up needing care herself. Audiences loved the warmth she brought to the knockabout Father of the Bride comedies and the spirit she showed
Don't tell me what to do.
as a feisty divorcee opposite Bette Midler and Goldie Hawn in First Wives Club.
I go out with you. Don't put me under split. Pretty good. You remember? You don't own me.
Unlike many actresses, Keaton continued to be cast as alluring well into middle age. That was, in fact, the central premise of the romance that earned her her last Oscar nomination, Something's Gotta Give. The co-star close to her age, Jack Nicholson, was dating her on-screen daughter. Such was the custom for leading men. But in a switch from custom, Keaton's character was being wooed by Keanu Reeves.
How old are you?
I'm 36.
So I'm like almost 20 years older than you. That's an enormous amount of years to be older than somebody, don't you think?
Don't think it matters at all.
Okay, but in terms of us, I mean, you just want us to be friends, right?
Honestly? No.
So, what do you want to be?
I think I'd embarrass you if I told you.
I was embarrassed just getting dressed to see you.
The film worked because Diane Keaton was everything he thought she was. Smart, beautiful, funny, magnetic, just as she was in real life. And in real life capable of playing pretty much anything. Even a super supportive cartoon blue-tang mom to the title Fish in Pixar's Finding Dory.
Sing song, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming.
Diane Keaton swam with grace through dozens of character arcs and into audience hearts. I'm Bob Mondello.
This is NPR News.
And this is WNYC at 7:51. Next hour on Morning Edition, President Trump is promising to slash spending during the government shutdown.
We'll be making cuts that will be permanent. And we're only going to cut Democrat programs. I hate to tell you. I guess that makes sense.
Thousands of federal workers received layoff notices on Friday, but at least some of those intended firings have already been reversed. We'll tell you about that coming up on Morning Edition from NPR and WNYC. Mid-50s with some rain and some very strong winds out there. Coastal flood warnings as well, and high wind warnings all the way till 6 o'clock this evening. Be careful out there. Rain and a high near 59 today. Breezy, wind gusting to 45 to 60 miles an hour. Then more rain chances tonight, a low of 58 and still some strong winds.
WNYC support comes from HSS, ranked the #1 hospital in the nation in orthopedics for 16 years in a row by U.S. News and World Report, with outpatient locations in the tri-state area and Florida. Choose better, move better. More at hss.edu.
On the next Brian Lerner Show, our 30 Issues in 30 Days election series continues. It's issue 16, School Culture Wars as an issue in the New Jersey governor's race. Also, CNN legal analyst Ellie Honig on the indictment of New York State Attorney General Letitia James. We'll discuss the likely political defense that it's an act of retribution by President Trump, but also the specifics of the charge. What's the evidence in the case? The Brian Lerner Show, weekdays at 10 a.m. on WNYC.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Ian Martinez.
And I'm Michelle Martin. In August 1959, a watchman in a Catholic-run Indian boarding school in British Columbia, Canada, heard a noise, a cry really, coming from the incinerator. It was a newborn baby left in an ice cream carton. It was author and filmmaker Julian Brave Noisecat's father, Ed. Ed's beginning was unusual, but what followed was not, as he became one of thousands of Native children in Canada and the U.S. who were sent to these schools to strip them of their culture, who became targets of abuse and torture over decades, the scale of which has only recently been acknowledged. Brave Noisecat weaves his father's story into the larger canvas of the Native experience in a new book titled We Survived the Night. And he's with us now to tell us more about it. Julian Brave Noisecat, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you so much for having me on the public airwaves.
So let's start with the name of your book. There's a meaning to it.
Yeah, so We Survived the Night, the title of my book, is derived from the traditional way to give the morning greeting in Secwepemchin. That's my family's language, my indigenous language. We say Chilhuinok, which doesn't actually translate to good morning. It means you survived the night.
You write about Indian names in your book, and you say names come with responsibilities. So would you tell us about yours?
My dad was found in the trash incinerator at St. Joseph's Mission, the Indian residential school that my family was sent to unlearn our Indian ways. And according to the news article where the night watchman who found him is quoted, his cries for life sounded like the noise of a cat. You know, my last name is Noisecat, which is especially kind of mind-blowing to me because our last name Noisecat actually did not originally mean Noisecat. That was just, the missionaries wrote down the name wrong, essentially. It was originally Nowiskit. That was our ancestral Salish name. But then, I don't know, I mean, something about Indians and names, right? The name kind of found its own meaning and story, and it became one of survival.
What a start to life. Your father barely surviving his birth had to have affected his life. And then in turn, it had to have affected your life, which is kind of the core of the book. Tell us what you'd like to tell us about it.
Well, my dad was the first generation of kids on the Cannon Lake Indian Reserve that were not taken away to St. Joseph's Mission, the Indian residential school that my grandmother was sent away to. And when you deprive a people, an entire race, of the right to parent their children, eventually you break down the fundamental structures of the family system. You know, my dad was sort of always running from his own demons, his past, and eventually he left both me and my little sister behind. And so the book really is about trying to understand him and our story and what it is to be Native, because my connection to that, my community, was broken when I was a young boy.
You know, you co-directed the Oscar-nominated documentary film called Sugarcane. It follows you and your father's reckoning alongside the story of an investigation that unearthed the remains of more than 200 children at a former Indian residential school in Canada. Why was it important for you to document these difficult conversations?
You know, my father did not know about the circumstances of his own birth and discovery in the trash incinerator until I directed Sugarcane and until he watched it in the film itself. So I think that part of what I was trying to communicate with that film was why this silence, why this lack of knowledge about what happened to Native people exists in the broader world in the way that that was in many ways internalized by our own communities and our own people. And then on the flip side of that, you know, as a storyteller, I'm also thinking very purposefully about what traditions were nearly wiped out by those schools, and that I, as a Native storyteller, have a responsibility to bring back to life on the page.
You know, we're talking about this as if it's kind of a linear narrative, but that isn't how the book unfolds. It's actually remarkably rich and multi-layered. You kind of lace it with native mythology, if I can use that term. About the coyote in particular. Could you read a little bit, please?
Yeah, you know, my people don't tell the coyote stories really anymore. And so, you know, as I was working on the book, I was also reading these old coyote stories that were gathered up in ethnographic texts 100+ years ago. And I just started to notice that there were so many parallels between our trickster ancestor, this guy called Coyote, who was sent to the earth by the creator to set things in order, and who was a trickster, so he did a lot of good, but he also messed a lot of stuff up. And, you know, my own father, with whom I have a loving but, you know, complex backstory. So here I guess I'll read a story about how our people narrated the arrival of the first white man in our territory as the return of the trickster coyote. This is from a chapter called The Drifters. The most common account held that coyote would reappear in the end times. When things came full circle, the trickster who molded the world into its indigenous state would be there, just to do what the trickster, needed to be done. Make something, like a son, or break something, like the wicked fishing gear, or steal something, like goose eggs or a wife, or invent essential ergonomic functions, like the elbow, or live a life full of damn good stories. Because how the world ends is just as important as how it begins.
That's wonderful. You know, when we let you go on one, we reach your mom.
Yeah.
She has her own story.
She does.
Your mom is not a native person, and the book is dedicated to her. I'm wondering how you decided to make sure she had presence in the story.
You know, the truth is that she raised me, so she was always going to have presence. And, you know, even though she's non-native, she's an Irish-Jewish New Yorker, and if you hear her talk, you'll hear it. You know, she did things like after my father and her split, she would still take me to visit his family so that I could understand the culture of who I was. She even learned how to bead so that I could have my own powwow regalia to travel and dance.
Well, so do you have a hope for this book, what it will do?
When we include native people in the story, I think that we understand this place a bit differently. My people have always considered the coyote stories nonfiction, and I think that it's long past time that the social sciences actually take these ideas and these stories seriously, because there's a reason we told them for thousands and thousands of years. And you can't tell me right now that this is not a world that is still spun around by tricksters and their tricks.
Julian Brave Noise-Cat is the author of We Survived the Night. Julian Brave Noise-Cat, thank you so much for talking with us.
Cooks Jam Michelle, really love the conversation.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm A. Martinez.
WNYC is supported by Netflix, presenting Ballad of a Small Player from director Edward Berger. Colin Farrell stars as a high-stakes gambler whose past starts to catch up with him. In select theaters October 15th, on Netflix October 29th.
Our Common Nature is a musical journey with Yo-Yo Ma and me, Ana Gonzalez, through this complicated country.
We go into caves, onto boats, and up mountain trails to meet people, hear their stories, their poetry, and of course, play some music. All to reconnect to nature and get closer to the things we're missing.
Listen to Our Common Nature from WNYC wherever you get podcasts.
This is WNYC, FM, HD, and AM New York.
Good morning. As some Israeli hostages are freed, some Palestinians are returning to Gaza City now that a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas is in effect, but much of their past lives are completely gone.
They cleared the rubble for building standing homes here just to spend the night inside. They are simply glad some walls are still standing.
I'm Michael Hill. It's Morning Edition from NPR and WNYC. A powerful powerful nor'easter pounds the New York City region. Critical medical research is on hold at Cornell University because of federal budget cuts, and some New Yorkers are getting ready to celebrate their urban indigenous identities tonight. It's Monday, October 13th, Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day. The news is next.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Louise Schiavone. In the Middle East this morning, a historic day as all 20 remaining living Israeli hostages have been freed by Hamas. President Trump arrived in Israel as the releases began. He later told the Israeli Knesset,
For so many families across this land, it has been years since you've known a single day of true peace. But now at last, not only for Israelis, but also for Palestinians and for many others, the long and painful nightmare is finally over.
After his address, he will then head to Egypt for what's being dubbed as a peace summit hosted by that nation. It will include world leaders from dozens of countries to mark the Israel-Hamas ceasefire. As NPR's Daniel Estrin reports from Tel Aviv, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has turned down an invitation to participate.
President Trump and Egypt's president extended an invitation to Netanyahu to attend the summit alongside Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. It would have been the first meeting between the Israeli and Palestinian leaders in nearly 10 years, but Netanyahu's office said he was turning down the invitation due to time constraints ahead of a Jewish religious holiday this evening. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
Vice President J.D. Vance says the Trump administration will continue its court fight to be able to deploy National Guard troops in Illinois. NPR's Joe Hernandez reports.
The ruling on Saturday allowed the Trump administration to keep the National Guard troops now in Illinois under federal control, but it blocked the deployment of those National Guard troops for now. Vice President Vance told ABC's This Week on Sunday that the government would continue arguing its case in court.
We're obviously going to litigate this as much as we can. We think that we have the authority to provide proper safety to our citizens all over the United States, but particularly in Chicago.
Illinois' Democratic Governor J.D. Pritzker has repeatedly said there's no need for the National Guard in Illinois or Chicago and has accused Trump of overstepping his authority.